Welcome back. It is your feel-good breakfast show, Expresso, and tomorrow it is World AIDS Day on the 1st of December, and HIV and AIDS is a virus that interferes with the body's ability to fight infections. It is transmitted through contact with infected blood and bodily fluids. No cure for AIDS exists, but strict adherence to antiretroviral regimens and, dramatically can slow down the disease's progression as well as prevent secondary infections and complications. Now, this morning we are joined by Dr. Emile Reid, a HIV and infectious disease expert, as we raise awareness around this treatable disease ahead of World AIDS Day, which is commemorated annually on the 1st of December, which is tomorrow.
Tomorrow is World AIDS Day.
I know, lest we forget, while other pandemics are happening, this is still very much the South African narrative. Just to recap, to give us a sense of where we stand now, you've obviously had a front row seat for many years now as we've progressed through this. Where are we right now? Are we getting it right?
We're absolutely getting it right. And I think where we were in the older days, in the 80s and 90s, is where we actually are with COVID right now. You know, and if one look at HIV as we speak, it's a completely manageable disease. It's a chronic disease like hypertension, diabetes, all of these things. So people that we're engaging with, people that we're working with, people that lives around us are positive and they're living a normal life because of the amazing antiretroviral treatments that are available.
I mean, South Africa is world-class when it comes to its research and its doctors.
Oh, world-leading, yeah.
We are world-leading. Now, Dr. Emile Reid, from your perspective, let's just quickly unpack the difference for those who don't really comprehend the difference between HIV and AIDS.
Yeah.
AIDS is something that we hardly see nowadays. HIV is the human immunodeficiency virus, so it refers to the virus that infects people, and whereas AIDS, the acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, refers to an advanced stage of HIV infection where the body has lost a majority of its immune function and people develop what we call secondary or opportunistic infections that once again is completely avoidable if people are commenced on treatment quite early in the development of their illness.
So that being said, if you expect or are experiencing any symptoms and suspect that you might have contracted HIV or AIDS, what do you do?
The important thing is exposure can mean different things. Exposure with a partner who has not disclosed their status to you is a massive shock usually. And the important thing to do is for people to then contact, for instance, their general practitioner or a specialist in HIV. They should be counseled, number one, regarding the possibilities of and also the risk of acquiring this infection. And then they need to be tested. And in the old days, we used to wait 2 weeks for these tests to actually sort of come back. Nowadays, those test results are available within 20 minutes after somebody have been tested. Obviously, if it is in the context of work-related exposure to blood or any form of exposure, obviously, that individual, whether it's a healthcare worker or anybody else, should also be counseled and tested, but they should be commenced on antiviral medication for 4 weeks, after which they then will undergo testing again to see whether there was any transmission of the virus. And we call that post-exposure prophylaxis.
Sure, a lot to unpack.
Yeah, I love the fact that we approach it from an emotional and from a physical sense, but I'm just thinking back to the early days in the 90s when we were having this conversation.
Yeah.
How far away any solution seemed, to see how far you and the rest of this amazing medical fraternity that's been tackling this have taken us. You're an amazing doctor. Thank you so much, man. We absolutely love you. Dr. Emil Reed, and we are commemorating World AIDS Day.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
The Breakfast Show, and you are just in time as we continue our health discussion with Dr. Reed on HIV and AIDS in commemoration of World AIDS Day, which is tomorrow on the 1st of December. Before we continue our medical chat, Dr. Reed, you are family to us, and your precious princess is celebrating her birthday. Yay. Let's wish Layla a happy birthday.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that. I'm sure she's going to have a wonderful day.
Oh, I'm sure she will. She's got an awesome dad, and I mean, we love just picking your brain when it comes to this. Now, Dr. Reed, we have unpacked HIV and AIDS. We have touched on where South Africa is at the moment when it comes to, the statistics. But from a person with HIV and with HIV, who is most at risk for contracting it?
Well, I think if you think about it, anybody that is exposed to blood products and anybody who is engaging in sexual activities are at risk. And I mean, sex is part of normal life, and whoever is living a normal life are at risk. And because people are not walking around with signs on their forehead saying, I'm HIV positive, you actually don't know. So the only reason or the only way that you'll be able to know somebody's status is if they are completely honest about it and actually disclose or divulge their status to those who they care for and who they love.
I love that you mentioned that you only know their status if they've been completely honest with you. Is there any point in time that you have to reveal your status to someone?
Well, the answer is no. Purely because that is private, and the important thing is that if you are on treatment and the correct treatment and your virus load have been suppressed to undetectable values, meaning that you are not at risk to infect anybody else, even if you bleed and people sort of touch your blood. And also you're not going to fall ill if your virus load is completely suppressed. If you go for an operation, also there is no reason for you to divulge your status because the precautionary measures of the surgeons should be in place to protect themselves, and more so if the patient is not on treatment. So all boils down to honesty within a relationship.
Okay. Now, Dr. Reed, I know, this is something that it comes down to the individual for disclosing that. If the person is in a relationship, what is the best way for them to break this news? Because that can come as a shock to anyone entering into a relationship and you're about to take your relationship to that next step. I almost feel like it's then too late. That should have been on the table from the get-go.
Exactly. And I think the big thing, it's easier said than done. My feeling as well is even before you get to the next level, it should have been put on the table and discussed. But I mean, as we know, that's probably one of the most difficult things to do. What I normally advise my patients, that's the first thing I ask them, do you have a partner, and have the partner been informed of your status? If they say no, I would recommend that they do it as soon as possible. Even myself, making myself available to facilitate that discussion. So if there's any questions or anything that arises from that conversation, I'm actually there not just as an observer, but also to put things in context if there's any questions they want to ask. And to tell you the truth, in the last 25 years, I have not had one case of where somebody collectively and with me divulge their information to a loved one that they've ever been rejected.
Okay.
So I believe that honesty and the willingness to discuss these issues are of utmost importance, and just another indication of how much you care and love the person that is with you in that relationship.
And if you do test positive for HIV, that you can live a healthy and normal life, given that you have the correct medication and have your viral load to a 0.
Absolutely.
There you go.
It's all about 0.
It's all about 0. Well, Dr. Reed is not going anywhere. HIV is a preventable disease, but more importantly, it isn't a death sentence as it was once believed to be. Now, we are chatting with a patient of Dr. Reed soon, so don't go anywhere. He's going to be sharing some of his own personal experience around his journey living with HIV. And if you would like to find out more about HIV and AIDS or need support, you can visit lifelinesa.co.za, or alternatively call their toll-free number, which is on your screen right now. It's 0800 0800 012 322. That is the number to call.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
We do have a very important discussion to continue right now. It's been illuminating because we are really getting information from one of the best in the business. Now, this morning we are discussing World AIDS Day for this week's Health Chat. And we are joined by our favorite, what a resource, Dr. Emile Reed, as well as a patient of the Good Doctors, Dorian Basson, who is now living with HIV. Dorian, welcome. Are you nervous? Does Zoe make you nervous or do I make you nervous?
I think both of you are making me nervous.
It can't be that smiling face.
No,
That's what he looks like.
definitely not.
That's what he looks like without a mask, incidentally. Dorian, so good to have you. Thank you so much for coming and joining this conversation.
And thank you for sharing your journey. If you don't mind, just, for our viewers at home, just giving them a little bit of an overview of how long you've been living with HIV and, what went through your mind when you got your result.
Wow. And I think that this is such an important conversation to have. So first of all, thank you for having me here. On the 5th of December, I'll be celebrating 16 years of living with HIV.
Wow.
And 16 years ago, an event happened. I was sexually assaulted while I was walking home, and I never thought that my life would change as much as it did, but that one event spiraled into me actually being infected with HIV, and the many emotions that you go through, because first of all, rape is one thing.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, as a young 22-year-old, having to deal with the fact that you are HIV positive, that is something entirely different. I was one of the top students at university at the time. And I landed up at Lentegeur Psychiatric Hospital because I had a mental breakdown on the night of the rape. And I could not fathom that all of this was happening to me at the same time. And I was academically expelled from university. And but I managed to let life go on after that. And the good doctor crossed my path. And I think that so many individuals have come on my way the last 16 years that have really inspired me and motivated me to actually just go on with life. Yeah.
How were you able to come to terms with it? Especially considering the circumstances of you being infected, that in itself is a masterclass in life, and you could learn lessons for the rest of your life. But now having to live with this condition, was there a moment, was there a person, was there a part of your faith? How have you been able to assimilate all of this?
I must tell you that it's been difficult. I've tried to commit suicide thrice, purely because I could not see my life going forward.
Future.
I didn't have a future, and I didn't see that there was any hope out there. Until one day in December, I was at the UWC Rector's concert, and a small, humble lady stood up to give her talk at this concert, and her name was Fahmida Miller, and she told the story. And now Fahmida is the first Muslim woman in South Africa that actually openly, publicly disclosed her status. And I remember sitting in that audience and crying, because there was someone just like me.
Yeah.
And that single moment changed my life forever, because then I knew that there was someone else out there. When I was diagnosed, I wasn't as clued up on HIV as I was supposed to be, as we all are supposed to be. And so I didn't know that there were other people that were actually HIV positive, because it wasn't something which was spoken about.
Yeah.
Well,
And
just
that's
imagine
why-
the people listening to you right now that are having that same revelation.
Absolutely.
Just, Dr. Emile Reid, we are running out of time, but for people that need access to antiretroviral medication, I know this is something that, you know, you don't need to have medical aid to have access to these types of drugs and medication. Just quickly from, you know, for anyone watching right now and is questioning, you know, where do I get the help that I need? Any advice?
Well, I think number one is that antiretroviral treatment makes HIV a manageable disease. And unlike in the past where we waited for somebody to fall seriously ill or develop AIDS, at this point in time, you can start medication as soon as you've been diagnosed and as soon as you've been counseled and you understand what awaits you. So that first step to get access to treatment is so important, and that's available in the government sector and the private sector. So there's no reason for you to not gain access to treatment.
Yeah, and find yourself a doctor who will look at you like Emile Reid looks at Dorian. I absolutely love it. Thank you for being brave enough to come here and share your story. Let's change that narrative.
Change the narrative.
Completely, man. You are a shining light of what can be achieved. I joke about a masterclass in life. I think you were going to be a Jedi of life after your journey. But thanking the doctor, again, for all the work you do, my friend, not just being a resource to us, but for what you do with your patients. Hopefully this has inspired you to look at this narrative, this story in a slightly different way. There is hope out there. We are getting it right.